Now, this is pretty shocking news, let me tell you. The very popular podcast TRIGGERnometry, which has welcomed guests from across the political spectrum, but which dares to platform those who are sometimes critical of wokeism or gender ideology, has had its bank account from Tide Bank cancelled. The co-founder of TRIGGERnometry is Konstantin Kisin, who's the author of the best-selling An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West, and he joins me now. Hi, Konstantin. Konstantin, when did you find out that your account had been cancelled by this bank?
We got a message about a week ago, and since that moment, we've been going back and forth with Tide Bank, trying to find out what the reason for them cancelling our bank account was. They refused to give us an explanation, which made us very suspicious. We know, as you do, for example, that there are other people in this country, fairly mainstream people actually, who've been unable to get a bank account for their political party and so on. And so because of that, we knew that is it's a possibility that this is politically motivated. We still haven't had an answer 5 days later. Eventually, after many questions, they simply told us they cannot provide any further information and shut down the conversation. And because of that, today we put a statement out on social media, which went viral. We had everyone from the Free Speech Union to Jordan Peterson to all sorts of friends and colleagues share this. And within a few hours, Tide suddenly could provide further information. And in fact, they just said that they're investigating this as a matter of the highest priority. So we'll wait and see to find out what the reason for this is, and we'll take it from there.
Do you have a suspicion that this is politically motivated, that you've welcomed? I mean, your program is absolutely brilliant and you listen to speakers from across the political spectrum, but you've interviewed the likes of Nigel Farage from GB News. Could that be your great crime?
Maybe. We've also interviewed Lord Andrew Adonis, the arch Remainer. We do try to speak to people from all sides, as you say. I hope that's not the case. I hope this has been a mistake of some kind. But as I said, we do have previous cases, and so that is obviously something we have thought about. Look, they messed with the wrong people in this instance. We've already had several offers from competitor banks to open an account. We've already taken all our money out of Tide, and we'll be finding out what's going on. And frankly, Mark, this wasn't really ever about us. We were always going to be okay. As you said, we're pretty big now, and we can weather the storm. What concerns me is the contempt with which they treated us when they told us they were closing our bank account. And if we were not able to raise these sort of concerns on social media and get traction and threaten legal action, then perhaps we would be in a position where we couldn't get another bank account, and they would be able to treat other customers with this sort of contempt, which is one of the reasons we're watching very carefully what they say and do. And if we're not happy about it, we will join forces with others. We will sue them, and we're going to take this all the way because it's completely unacceptable.
This disproves the idea that cancel culture is a myth, and it's a deeply chilling development, isn't it? We saw Us for Them, which is essentially a campaign group aimed at protecting the interests and rights of children. They lost their funding model through PayPal. The Free Speech Union were cancelled by PayPal. You couldn't make it up. This is beyond satire.
That's why it has to be opposed right at the beginning, I think. And so, as I say, we will look. I don't have any evidence at the moment that this is politically motivated. I also don't have any evidence that it's not, because of the complete disregard for honesty and open communication that Tide have shown in this instance. So we will wait and see, and we will find out. But you're right, Mark, this has happened before. And so what that means to me is we really have to make sure that we push back on every instance where something like this happens. We have to be really vigilant, because what's next? Well, are we going to cut off electricity from people that we disagree with? If that is what's happened here, this is completely unacceptable in a free society. And so, it's a big concern. You're right. And you mentioned the Free Speech Union. The Reclaim Party can't get a bank account. There are all sorts of these situations going on. And as I say, completely unacceptable.
Indeed. So stay with us for a moment if you can, Konstantin, because with us now is Free Speech Champion, the co-founder of the Daily Skeptic online newspaper and the founder of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young. Toby, your reaction to this story, worth stressing as what Konstantin has said there, that we cannot definitively prove that this is somehow a judgment on what TRIGGERnometry do, but it's a worrying development either way.
Yeah, it's extremely concerning. We're seeing, I think, increasingly channels like TRIGGERnometry being demonetized, no platformed by financial services companies, not because they've done anything unlawful, but because some executives at the banking company, the payment processing company, disapprove of the views being expressed by that organization. And, they shouldn't have any business censoring the views of people, even if they disapprove of those views. They shouldn't be intervening in debates and discussions in the public square in this way and trying to promote a particular ideological agenda, whether it's a left-wing agenda or a right-wing agenda. And as Konstantin says, it happened to the Free Speech Union, it happened to me personally, it happened to the Daily Skeptic last year. We kicked up an enormous fuss, just as Konstantin is doing now. I think it's the right thing to do. And in the end, all our accounts were reinstated. But it wasn't just us. There were plenty of people who've had their accounts removed for purely political reasons, not because they've done anything illegal, but just because the companies seem to disapprove of certain things they're saying. So Law or Fiction, the UK Medical Freedom Alliance, an organization called Left Lockdown Skeptics was debanked by PayPal. What we're seeing, Mark, is the embryonic form of the Chinese social credit system beginning to emerge in the West. And we have to draw a line in the sand. We have to make it absolutely clear that we won't tolerate this interference in our democracy by these companies that often aren't even based here. They're based in California. They're based somewhere overseas. What right do they have to kick people off their platforms, to exclude them from the public square just because they happen to disapprove of their perfectly lawful views or the lawful views of people they have on their shows? It's completely unacceptable. We have to draw a line in the sand and say, no, we're not going to stand for this.
Konstantin, this is not a confected culture war. This is not a conspiracy theory, is it? We saw the Canadian government freeze the bank accounts of truckers who objected to vaccine mandates during the pandemic.
We did indeed, and this is why we're suspicious. As I got to keep repeating this because I want to be fair. We don't know if this is politically motivated, but the reason we are all concerned is, as Toby mentioned, there have been plenty of cases in this country and in others of this happening. So when it happens to a podcast, look, our mission at TRIGGERnometry is to have honest conversations with fascinating people about difficult subjects. And so I understand that there is a sensitivity about the conversations that we have, but I don't think that makes us ineligible for a bank account. As Toby says, I don't think people who commit no crimes should ever fear that situation occurring with them. And in our case, we are determined to make sure that this hasn't happened in this case. And we're determined to make sure that Tide suffer the consequences of their behavior, even if this isn't politically motivated. This is not acceptable. You can't shut down people's bank account and refuse to give them an explanation. That isn't right. And so we're going to keep pursuing this. We're going to wait and see very carefully what Tide come back with after their high priority investigation, which they initially refused to do. And if we're not happy about it, all options are on the table because we're looking out for other people who may not have the clout that we have to go after them and make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else.
Well, on your podcast, you interview figures on the left and the right. It's highly entertaining. Yourself and Francis Foster co-created TRIGGERnometry. It's a global phenomenon. I'd recommend all of my viewers and listeners give it a try if they haven't already, and support it in every way they can. Ditto for the Free Speech Union and the Daily Skeptic online newspaper, both co-founded by Toby.
Mark, may I just jump in and actually, before you go, just to say that actually the Free Speech Union is so important because when things like this happen,